Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Scientists in Singapore have created human skin in a petri dish. They say the development is a game-changing step that will mean less use of animals for testing cosmetic products. Made out of skin cells from donors and collagens, it has the same chemical and biological properties as a human skin. The skin is made using a printing machine which creates pattern and layers, and each tiny piece takes less than 1 minute to make. Researchers are now developing the skin to test whitening effects of cosmetic and skincare products. Talks over South Korea for sharing costs for hosting the U.S. military has been halted by officials from both countries. There has been a public backlash from the Asian nation over reported demands by the Trump administration that Seoul pays a $5 billion bill. Both sides have suggested that they are unable to fairly compromise on sharing the cost of hosting over 28,000 U.S. troops. Jack Barton has more.
I think they will agree to some raising of the cost, but I don't think they're going to agree to $5 billion if that is indeed the price tag that the US is putting on this. We haven't had official confirmation of that just yet, but those talks did wrap up a short while ago and we're told there was no progress at them. The foreign ministry here issuing a statement to that effect, indicating in that statement that it might be inclined again to raise the amount of money it contributes a little bit, but calling the amount of money that the US was asking for a drastic increase, something it's not prepared to do. The US has been arguing that in a way South Korea gets a bit of a free ride out of having the US troops here. It doesn't have to spend as much on its own military. There is a degree of truth in that. However, President Moon Jae-in has dramatically risen defense spending here and is trying to bring up that gap. So, from the South Korean perspective, there is an argument that it is already trying to fill that void by spending on its own forces. But there's going to be a lot of reluctance really to come anywhere close to that kind of figure.
A new regulation or notice issued by the country's State Press and Publication Administration has set out strict guidelines for playing video games for minors, those under 18 years of age, with the aim of combating video game addiction and other health concerns. Omar Khan has more.
It's just another Sunday morning for Adam Turnbull and his son Tristan. Enjoying what's left of Guangzhou's warm autumn season, the two are getting in a bit of exercise and play before it's back to school the next day for the youngster. But like any other 6-year-old, play undeniably includes video games, and it's something his father keeps a close eye on.
Well, I do think that there needs to be some kind of awareness for the issue of video game addiction and really wasting a lot of time, because of course for kids, in my opinion, as a parent, we have a lot of challenges, especially here in China. My son goes to grade 1 in a public school. Every evening he's got at least an hour of homework, and so if we have to fight with him to get his homework done as opposed to playing video games, that's something that we have to, it's a challenge that we have.
Luckily for the Canadian expat who's been in China for nearly 2 decades and has worked with STEAM education as an innovator, a newly issued regulation setting limits on gaming might just be the solution.
I think that companies having this restriction as opposed to the user, the gamer, I guess, it makes a lot of sense in China, because I think that it's kind of a new phenomenon. It's a new, especially with accessibility with devices, with mobile phones, with having gaming in your hands at all time. China has a challenge to make sure that there's a balance, and there has to be some kind of accountability to the companies that are profiting from having video games in everyone's pockets 24/7.
With China being the world's second largest video game market in terms of game revenue, these regulations heavily focus on game developers and big companies. I'm here at Tencent's offices in Shenzhen to see exactly how they're looking to support this new effort. For Tencent, they're already ahead of the curve. 3 years ago, they established a special team focusing on anti-addiction solutions.
I think it's a good news for this industry. So actually, we have done a lot of works in this area, and now this new announcement give us, I think it's a very clear guidance for our future work. So based on what we have already done, so we have a very clear direction.
As for who's responsible for creating awareness around video game addiction, Zheng says we can all do our bit.
Parents, teachers, schools, of course, the game companies should work together and to find a useful, maybe a perfect solution for this topic.
However fun video games may be, can it really compare to a good old play in the park? Omar Khan, CGTN, Guangzhou.
Portability, accessibility, and sustainability were the main themes at this year's Toilet Tokyo exhibition, which is being held from November 20th to November 22nd at the Big Sight Conference Center in Japan's capital city, Tokyo. Political party leaders from both the U.S. and China met in Beijing on Monday. This was for the 11th U.S.-China Political Party Leaders Dialogue. Let's take a listen.
A delegation of Democratic and Republican Party leaders meet with senior officials from the Communist Party of China in Beijing. Both sides believe the exchange will lead to better cooperation agreements and come up with practical solutions to challenges.
The wisdom of the two countries' political leaders has contributed to the development of China-U.S. ties. Win-win and mutually beneficial are the nature of bilateral relations of our two countries. Trade volume between China and the U.S. has grown 252 times from less than $2.5 billion U.S. dollars when diplomatic ties were established to more than $630 billion U.S. dollars in 2018.
Many say the dialogue could not be better timed, as this year marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries, and there's much more both can learn from each other.
So my preference and wish and desire is for the U.S.-Chinese relationship to continue to be a very strong relationship. It's the most important relationship for the United States.
The entire world looks to leadership from both China and the United States working together. So many of the issues facing the world cannot be solved by China or the United States alone, only together. And that's why we need to quickly resolve this trade dispute. But in order to really solve the trade dispute, we have to address the underlying issues that gave rise to the trade dispute. And that means understanding the perspectives of both sides so that we can reach resolution.
What we're continuing to learn through these 11 events now that we've had over the years is understanding each other's culture, understanding how each other look at certain problems and certain issues, and more importantly, looking at where we can come together to continue to work issues to resolve those issues, whether it's counterterrorism, weapons of mass destruction, many of the diseases that we both face, not only our countries, but the rest of the world, and then how the global economy is impacted by how us, the two largest economies of the world, interact together.
Political elites from both China and the United States have engaged in frank discussions on topics including policy trends, trade and economic ties, and governance. The dialogue has provided a platform for both sides to exchange views on issues that matter to the mutual welfare of both nations. Su Yuting, CGTN, Beijing.
This is Asia Outlook broadcasting from Myanmar International Radio. You can visit our website at miradio.com.mm. You can also listen to our radio programs live on the website. United States President Donald Trump pardoned 2 service members accused of war crimes in Afghanistan. He also restored the rank of another who was demoted for actions in Iraq. The White House said the decision is in line with the long history of granting individuals a second chance. But critics said the move could undermine the military justice system. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has not said whether he supports the move, but he said he held robust talks with the president about the cases. With the air quality currently sitting at severe levels, New Delhi's Oxygen Bar is the place to be for residents escaping the smog. Sri Lanka's new president and scourge of the Tamil Tigers, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, on Monday urged minorities unnerved by his election victory to work with him, as he was sworn in at a ceremony steeped in symbolism for his core supporters. Rajapaksa is a divisive figure but popular among his own majority Sinhalese Buddhist community. His landslide win split the island nation of 21.6 million on religious and ethnic lines as never before, 7 months after deadly Islamic attacks. Ravinda Bawa has more.
Former Defense Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa is all set to take on a new role. His supporters poured in to congratulate him and celebrate this moment of victory. Religious leaders also conveyed their best wishes. He has received more than 52% votes. He comfortably beat his rival Sajith Premadasa, who received about 42% votes.
Last 4.5 years, most of our economy have been ruined and the people have been suffering, and especially reconciliation process have been broken. You can see from the results also. So we have to build again the nation.
Rajapaksa's campaign focused on his credentials as the defense secretary who ended the 26-year-long civil war against the Tamil rebels. He raised the issue of national security and promised to crush extremism. Sri Lankans turned out in large numbers to vote for change.
We want to live freely in our country. This is the only expectation we have from our new president. We feel he can do it, as he has ended the civil war. That's why we voted for him. We trust him as he is not a politician, but a government servant.
I am representing young generation. As a youngest, I think my vote, I am voted for him because his technical part. He's a very, very technological person and digitalized person.
Rajapaksa's opponent, Sajith Premadasa, conceded defeat and resigned from his post as the deputy leader of the party.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa has crossed many hurdles to become the president. But the real challenge begins now as he has inherited a struggling economy and a politically polarized society. In order to deliver on all the promises he has made, he will need the cooperation of the government, but the reins of the parliament lie in the hands of opposition till February. Ravinder Bawa, CGTN, Colombo.
1 civilian and 4 Afghan army personnel has been wounded in 2 explosions in the Afghan capital, Kabul. Local people said the blast happened outside an Afghan army training center that were caused by hand grenades, which went off just as army officers and security personnel were arriving. No arrest has been made. No group has yet claimed any responsibility. Over the past few months, major Afghan cities have seen several attacks by Taliban and Islamic State militants. On the streets of India, retail outlets are seeing fewer cash transactions thanks to digital payment apps. CGTN's Shweta Bajaj goes to the streets of Delhi to find that smallest transactions are now happening digitally.
Ramesh has been running this business for 35 years. He sells local snacks for 30 Indian rupees, which equals 50 US cents. Now, he's doing almost 25 to 30% of his transactions through digital apps.
The office goers who come to us don't use digital payments, but the labourers who eat here, they are the ones who pay us using digital payment applications.
Payments which are small in amount are actually changing by these kind of small vendors adapting to digital technologies and thus reducing the cash transactions.
And the changes are not limited to big cities. Smaller towns are adding to this growth, contributing to a massive 55% increase in digital transactions in India last year. That's even more than China's 48% growth. Capgemini's recent report, World Payment Report 2019, says India's growth is because of digital wallets and the success of e-commerce platforms. It all fits in with Modi's pet project, Digital India, which aims to get large numbers of people to shift from cash to digital transactions.
Every time you'll have to visit ATM, get the cash, keep it in your pocket. So by digital payment, we'll easily just pay the amount to install.
One important factor in the growth is the number of people in India who don't have bank accounts but do have mobile phones. India now boasts an estimated 45 mobile wallet companies, but the potential is still huge. The number of cashless transactions Indian consumers make still runs at a tiny fraction of Chinese shoppers. The next few years are certain to see the market grow dramatically, but analysts predict they will also bring to the fore such challenges as privacy issues and scams. Shweta Bajaj, CGTN, New Delhi, India.
In Japan, there is an increasing concern about school bullying. Hundreds of thousands more cases were reported last year than in 2017. Our correspondent, Terence Terashima, has the details from Tokyo.
Bullying has become a very worrying issue in Japanese schools. According to a government survey, 2018 saw the largest ever number of reported cases, 543,933 in total, a rise of nearly a third on the previous year. What's even more alarming, however, is about 4 in 5 of these cases are from elementary schools. Experts warn that those who are subject to continuous bullying from a young age are more likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress.
A definition of bullying has been broadened to account for various forms of harassment, which accounts for the increase. But increased social media use amongst children also plays a big part.
However, while the internet may be to blame for many of the cases, it can also backfire on the bullies.
Children of all ages are now using mobile phones, which is possibly contributing to the increase because of bullying through social networks. But at the same time, it's also proof of harassment.
Bullying in schools are becoming a serious social problem in Japan. Parents are blaming the schools and education officials for turning a blind eye, hoping that problem will go away before it becomes serious, protecting their reputations rather than the well-being of the children. Experts say one of the reasons why school bullying is so endemic in Japan is because of an old cultural teachings, or how it's shameful to show any signs of weakness.
It is not easy to say help in Japanese culture. We have to change that. Teach children that it is okay to ask for help. Also, people around them should make an effort to see the signs. We're working on a system where people can report bullying or ask for help anonymously.
Yuki Yanagisa, who works with a support group, has experienced herself of bullying in schools. She says there's much more to the problem and therefore the solution than meets the eye.
Best measure against bullying is not trying to find a solution between the victims and perpetrators, but bystanders in schools also have an important role to play. They should not be ignorant, and teachers should function as supervisors.
It may be no surprise to learn that the number of teenage suicides has also increased in Japan in recent years. Experts are calling on the government to take the issue more seriously. Terence Hiroshima, CGTN, Tokyo.
Thailand's Bangkwang Central Prison has a reputation for being one of the harshest and most unforgiving prisons in the country. Severe overcrowding takes a heavy psychological, physical, and mental toll on inmates. Now a prison program is hoping to help prisoners turn toward religion in an effort to reflect on their crimes. Our correspondent, Dustia Saokawa, reports.
Foreigners know it as the Bangkok Hilton. Thais have nicknamed it the Big Tiger. They say that once inside, it eats men alive. This is one of Thailand's oldest prisons, built not to be an ordinary prison, but a penitentiary for the worst offenders, those who are serving life sentences and those on death row awaiting executions. For the almost 6,000 inmates here, being in their 6x4-meter cell with up to 40 other inmates for 15 hours each day is the harsh reality of life behind bars. Gai is a convicted killer. This prison has been his home for more than a decade. The conditions at times has been brutal and pushed him to the brink. His daughters grew up without him in their lives. He now has a granddaughter whom he can't hold. The hardest part is not knowing when or if he will ever be released.
Before, every day from waking up to eating, showering, go to bed, I lived in shackles. They were sealed to my ankles 24/7. Every second you know that you are no longer free.
This is often known as one of the harshest prisons in Thailand and even perhaps the world, with conditions that have led many to either lose their life or their sanity. But a new prison program is hoping to change all this and help reform the character of inmates through art, religion, and self-reflection. The art of sculpting Buddha statues has been adopted here for 30 inmates, a program initiated by the Department of Corrections.
Boredom makes inmates think of bad thoughts because they live with other criminals. We want to change their mindset with activities they can connect with. Sculpting through Buddhism allows religion to polish their minds.
Around 95% of Thais are Buddhists, and it is widely believed that making Buddha images provides an opportunity for reflection and meditation. These holy statues serve as visual imagery intended to narrate aspects of Buddha's life and lessons, principles that prisoners can adopt in their day-to-day lives as they work to reform themselves.
I didn't think I could do it. I didn't have much concentration because of my time in prison. But I started to enjoy it, and I become so focused that I don't want to leave my chair or even take a break. That's what happened to all of us.
The hard clay slowly mixed with water and kneaded until it is soft. Just like these hardened criminals, fueled by faith, perhaps finding a spiritual path. And as Gai learns how to shape and mold the clay into sacred forms and figures, he realizes that he also has the ability to shape and mold his own destiny. Dusita Saokao, CGTN, Bangkok, Thailand.
Efforts to clean up have begun in Hong Kong, and primary and secondary schools have reopened after 6 days of being closed. Scattered incidents of protesters stopping trains and blocking traffic occur on a much smaller scale than its demonstrations of the past week. City workers are inspecting the damage to a main road tunnel that remains closed after protesters torched the toll booths. A small group of protesters remain at Hong Kong Polytechnic University for fear of being arrested once they leave. Indonesia and China share an interest in folklore, and a toy company is documenting all of that. The company Good Guys Never Win creates unique figurines for collectors around the globe, but its most popular market is in Indonesia and China. CGTN's Sukinawa Aluwalia reports from Jakarta.
Superheroes, politicians, and vampires. Toy maker Good Guys Never Win has it all. Their unusual range of toy figurines has been a favorite of collectors for many years. The company was founded 14 years ago, and so far they have developed hundreds of unique toys. But its best-selling series is a collection of Asian ghosts, which are especially popular in the Chinese toy market.
This is a variant. Our series is called Setan Lokal, Local Ghosts. But this one we included, we actually took out the word local and replaced it with import. Because this is a very popular vampire in China, which we actually watch a lot here.
Its popularity comes from Indonesia and China's interest in ancient folklore and their affinity for all things mystical and supernatural. The company has also created environmentally friendly toys. This one was showcased in Taipei's Toy Festival this year, and it's made out of 100% recycled plastic, which was produced and sourced right here in Indonesia. The company has built a dedicated fan base in Indonesia and China, but hopes to expand to bigger markets in the future.
In a way that what we do is we are documenting history, we are doing social documentation. Our products mainly speaks about what's going on in Asia, what's going on in Indonesia, like strange things that are happening. If you see a lot of them, mostly are from news, something that actually happened, or folklore that's been told for many generations.
These figurines are more than just toys. They are a reflection of Asia's rich, diverse, and fascinating cultures. Silkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
Russia is expected to return 3 captured ships to Ukraine on Monday. That's according to local reports quoting Russian border guards. The 3 naval vessels were seized last year near the Kerch Strait at the northern end of the Black Sea. Moscow said they breached the Russian border and conducted dangerous maneuvers despite warnings from accompanying Russian vessels. Ukraine has denied the charges. Moscow has already returned the vessel's Ukrainian crew in a prisoner swap with Kiev. Hundreds of people gathered at the Beifengxia base of China Conservation and Research Center of Giant Panda in Ya'an to welcome Panda Beibei's return to China. A South Korean court has begun hearing a long-awaited civil case against the Japanese government, brought by a group of women forced into sexual slavery during the Second World War. CGTN's Jack Barton has more from Seoul.
Got underway on Wednesday at the Seoul Central District Court involves compensation claims by women forced to work in military brothels and marks another legal battle over the legacy of Japan's 35-year colonial-era occupation of the Korean Peninsula. The case also comes at a time when ties between Seoul and Tokyo are in their worst state in decades, as a result of the so-called Comfort Women issue and a ruling last year by South Korea's Supreme Court that ordered Japanese firms to compensate some wartime forced laborers. That ruling is believed to have prompted a range of trade retaliation measures by Tokyo, which has since seen Korean consumers start a boycott against Japanese goods. Proceedings got underway Wednesday with empty seats in the defendant's dock. Japan insists all compensation issues were settled in 1965 by a treaty that normalized relations. Tokyo accuses Seoul of continuously reopening the history book on issues settled by the treaty and also points to its sovereign immunity that shields it from lawsuits abroad, all of which has angered victims.
Japan must reflect on its wrongdoings. When it has made innocent children suffer, it must reflect, apologize, and compensate.
Japan isn't being honorable. They should show up at court if they are.
There were 11 surviving former Comfort women when the group suit was filed in 2016, along with the families of 6 deceased victims.
And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MI Radio. Thank you for being with us. I'm Melody. We'll be back next week. Until next time.